When it comes to recovering from infidelity, accountability is often a misunderstood, minimised and avoided part of the process. Too often the betrayed partner ends up carrying the weight, while the unfaithful partner takes baby steps, tries to push it aside, or even gets a free pass from counsellors or friends. But without accountability, can that actually be real repair? The After the Affair podcast with me, Luke Shillings, is here to help you process, decide and move forward on purpose following infidelity. Together we'll explore what's required to rebuild trust not only in yourself but also with others. Whether you stay or leave, I can help, and no matter what your story, there will be something here for you. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the After the Affair podcast with me, your host, Luke Shillings. You're listening to episode number 153. And today we're diving into the topic of accountability after betrayal. This episode was sparked by a really important message I received from a listener recently, which I'll share with you, at least in part, anonymously. She wrote, "Something I'm realising 2 years in is how much of a variation there is in accountability and responsibility before and after infidelity. From what I can see, most people who cheat really resist taking responsibility and true accountability. Meanwhile, the betrayed partner is usually the one who plumbs their depths to put themselves back together. Even counsellors sometimes seem to give the unfaithful partner an out, instead of challenging them to reckon honestly with the harm that they've caused. I believe true relational repair means accountability on both sides, but my partner views accountability, regret, and vulnerability as weakness rather than strengths." This listener went on to describe how lonely it feels to know that accountability is necessary, yet to see so little of it addressed openly. And I know that she isn't alone. Many of you listening will have felt the same imbalance, carrying the heavy work of healing while your partner avoids the mirror. So today I want to explore what accountability really means in the context of infidelity, why unfaithful partners tend to resist it, why the betrayed partner often ends up doing most of the heavy lifting, and how shame, vulnerability, and societal conditioning, especially for men, shape this whole dynamic. Now, for those of you who've been around a while, you will have got used to the fact that I like a definition, so let's start with one. Accountability, in this context, for the unfaithful partner, isn't about endless self-flagellation or walking around with a scarlet letter forever pinned to your chest. This is not 1850. It's not about being cruel to the unfaithful partner. Accountability is about owning your choices, reckoning with the harm caused, and committing to change. It looks like saying, my actions caused pain. I may not have set out to hurt you, but I did. I take responsibility for that, and I will not minimise it, shift it back onto you, or hide from it. The distinction is subtle but crucial. It's not, I am a bad person who hurts people, because that often traps somebody in shame. It's, I made choices that caused real harm, and I own it. Without this reckoning, the burden falls back onto the betrayed partner. They become both the victim of the betrayal and the fixer of the damage. And that imbalance is, well, exhausting, it's unsustainable, and quite frankly, it's unfair. So why is accountability so rare? I have one word for you. Shame. For the unfaithful partner, shame acts like a shield. To fully face what they've done feels unbearable, because it threatens their self-image, their decency, even their sense of who they are. Shame whispers, if I admit this, then I am a bad person. If I say it out loud, I'll be exposed and maybe even abandoned. And because the human brain is wired to avoid pain, they do whatever they can to protect themselves from that shame. So instead of leaning in, they defend, they minimise, they justify, they try to move on quickly, hoping that if they don't look at it too closely, maybe the problem will just dissolve and go away. But of course, that doesn't work. It leaves the betrayed partner carrying the reality alone. And then there's another layer, cultural and societal conditioning, particularly for men, not exclusively, but we've inherited scripts that say vulnerability equals weakness, that regret makes you small, that saying I was wrong is a kind of surrender. To own up is to lose control, and so accountability is resisted at all costs. But the irony is, accountability is not weakness at all. Accountability is strength. Vulnerability is strength. To face your own choices, to sit in the discomfort of the damage caused, and to still choose to move forward with honesty, that's courage. It's maturity. And in relationships, honestly, it's the only path to real repair. Now, while the unfaithful partner is often caught in shame and avoidance, the betrayed partner doesn't get that luxury. They're in survival mode, and survival demands depth. So what happens? The betrayed partner becomes the one diving deep. They're reading the books, listening to the podcasts, seeking therapy. They're rebuilding their sense of self-worth piece by piece. They're asking the hard questions. Why did this happen? What does it mean about me? How do I move forward? And while this growth is powerful, and I want to acknowledge it as strength, it also highlights the painful imbalance. You've been gutted by betrayal, and yet you're the one showing up to do the deepest work. Meanwhile, your partner, the one who just broke the trust, is taking baby steps, if any. This is why accountability matters so much, because without it, the relationship rests on a tilted foundation. One person carrying the weight of repair, the other avoiding it. Think of it like a seesaw. On one end sits the betrayed partner, weighed down with the grief, the questions, and the hard work of trying to put themselves back together. And on the other end sits the unfaithful partner, often lighter, lifted up by avoidance or minimisation. Without both sides leaning in, the seesaw tilts dramatically. And as anyone who's ever sat on one knows, you can't balance for long when all the weight is on one side. Sooner or later, somebody falls off. Or maybe picture a wall bearing an uneven load. One side is straining, bowing under the pressure, while the other side remains almost untouched. It might hold for a time, but eventually cracks form. And that imbalance makes collapse almost inevitable unless the weight is shared. That's what happens when accountability is missing. The betrayed partner becomes the load bearer, the fixer, the one holding everything together. And the unfaithful partner, the one who created the breach, avoids the very work that would make the wall strong again. The tilt, the imbalance, it can't last. Either the betrayed partner collapses under the strain, or the relationship itself comes crashing down. Accountability is the only thing that begins to level the ground. Now, one nuance that I do want to add, because I think it can make accountability more possible, and it's this. There's a difference between saying, "You hurt me," and "I feel hurt because of your actions." At first glance, they sound almost identical, and in truth, both validate the betrayed partner's pain. But the subtle shift in language changes the way accountability is received. The first, "you hurt me," lands like an identity statement. It paints the unfaithful partner as a person who hurts. And for someone already drowning in shame, that can feel like an immovable verdict. I'm harmful. I'm broken. I'll never be good enough again. The second, on the other hand, "I feel hurt because of your actions," still acknowledges the pain and the cause, but it leaves the door open. It separates the behaviour from the identity. It makes it possible to say, "My choices caused harm, and I can take full responsibility for them," without collapsing into, "I am nothing but harmful." Why does this matter? Well, it's because when somebody gets stuck in "I am harmful," shame takes over. And shame does not encourage change. It paralyzes it. It freezes people in place. They retreat into defensiveness, minimization, or avoidance because the pain of facing themselves feels unbearable. But when they can frame it as "my actions caused harm," it shifts the focus. Now, instead of being locked into a permanent identity, there's space for reckoning, repair, growth. There's space to ask, what led me to those actions, and how do I ensure I never repeat them again? Accountability, then, is about owning the harm without making it a fixed identity. It's about saying, yes, I did this. Yes, it caused pain. And because of that, I have responsibility to change. Think of it like holding a broken object in your hand. If you say, I break everything I touch, you'll be too ashamed to even try picking it up again. But if you say, I broke this and I need to learn how to handle it more carefully, there's a pathway forward. One closes the door with shame, the other opens it with responsibility. And for the betrayed partner, this distinction doesn't mean minimizing your pain. Your hurt is real, it's valid, and it deserves full acknowledgement. But sometimes shifting the frame from identity to action can be the difference between your partner hiding behind shame and your partner stepping into accountability. Another frustration I often hear, and this was mentioned by the listener's letter too as well, where it was captured beautifully, is how professionals sometimes mishandle accountability in the wake of infidelity. For some betrayed partners, it feels like their therapist or counsellor rushes to kind of balance the scales. They hear things like, well, every relationship takes two people, or what role did you play in the breakdown? And while those questions may be valid in the bigger general relationship context, when they're introduced too soon after betrayal, they can feel like salt in the wound. And instead of validation, the betrayer hears minimization instead of accountability. The unfaithful partner hears an out. But is this always a systemic failing? Maybe. Sometimes it reflects deeper cultural or religious frameworks that prioritize keeping the family together over, for example, facing painful truths. Sometimes it's poor training, a counsellor who just hasn't been taught how betrayal trauma works, and so therefore treats infidelity as if it's just any other marital conflict. And yes, sometimes it's simply a poor quality professional who defaults to cliches instead of engaging with the specifics of betrayal. And yet, here's where nuance matters. We all also have to acknowledge perception. When someone's trust has been shattered, when their world has just been turned upside down, every comment is filtered through that damaged lens. A well-meaning attempt to explore relationship dynamics can easily be misinterpreted as blame shifting. So sometimes it's not that the counsellor or the professional is excusing the behaviour, but that the client's raw pain makes any exploration feel invalidating. So where does that leave us? I think the answer is timing and clarity. In the immediate aftermath of betrayal, what the betrayed partner needs most is validation. Yes, you were wronged. Yes, you are allowed to feel hurt and angry. Yes, this pain is real. And what the unfaithful partner needs is to be held accountable. You made choices that caused this pain. Own it. Don't minimize it. Don't excuse it. Only later, once the validation and accountability have been firmly established, can the wider relational patterns be explored. Not as a way of excusing the betrayal, but as a way of understanding how the relationship moves forward. If you skip that first stage, if you rush into, let's talk about what you both did wrong, you leave the betrayed partner feeling abandoned and the unfaithful partner avoiding responsibility. That's why so many people walk away from counselling saying, I felt like I was the one on trial, even though I was the one that was betrayed. True professional support needs to be pragmatic and kind, but also direct. It should sound something like, yes, your behaviour caused harm. Yes, your partner is hurting. Let's acknowledge that honestly. And then, if you're both willing, let's figure out how to move forward. Anything less risks prolonging the pain, leaving your partners both stuck in the very imbalance that accountability is meant to repair. Another important point here is how accountability connects to breaking cycles. Many unfaithful partners act out of old wounds. Sometimes it's family patterns, the way emotions were handled or not handled when they were growing up. Sometimes it's childhood dynamics that taught them to seek safety through avoidance or external validation. Sometimes it's unhealed pain that has never been named, let alone addressed. And while those explanations can create empathy, they are not excuses. Yes, understanding your history helps explain why you behave the way you do. But explanation is not justification. At some point, every adult has to reckon with the truth. This may be where I came from, but it's not where I have to stay. One of the most powerful things I've heard from a betrayed partner reflecting on this was, I didn't do better because I didn't learn something better. But now that I realise that, it's my obligation to do better. And that's the essence of accountability. It's not just saying I made a mistake, it's saying I see the pattern I've inherited and I refuse to keep repeating it. Think of it like passing a baton in a relay race. Each generation hands something down: values, beliefs, behaviours. Some of those batons are heavy, toxic, in some cases even broken, and yet, if you simply keep running, you hand the same baton to the next person. Your partner, your children, the people closest to you. Accountability is when someone stops mid-race and they look at what they're carrying and says, this baton ends with me. I won't pass this weight to anybody else. That's the heart of accountability. It's not just owning what happened in the past, it's making a conscious decision to stop the cycle, to build something healthier, and to ensure the damage doesn't repeat. Not in your own life, and not in the lives of your children. Because without that choice, the cycle just continues. And as the old saying goes, what we don't repair, we repeat. So, what does accountability look like after betrayal? It's not endless grovelling. It's not being defined forever by your worst decision. It's the courage to say, I made choices that caused harm. I won't minimise or excuse them, and I will do the work to ensure I don't repeat them. And for betrayed partners, you are right to expect accountability. You are right to need it. Without it, the burden of repair will fall squarely on your shoulders, and that isn't sustainable. Accountability is not about cruelty or punishment. It's about truth. And without truth, reconciliation, whether together or apart, has no foundation. So let me leave you with this reflection. If accountability is the missing piece in your relationship right now, what would it look like to claim it? Either by asking for it directly or by setting a boundary that says, I will not carry this burden alone. Thank you ever so much for being here and listening to this episode of the After the Affair podcast. A big thank you again to the listener who wrote in so honestly that sparked today's conversation. I really appreciate it. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How has accountability, or lack of it, shaped your own healing journey? Reach out to me on Instagram, in the After the Affair Facebook group, or email me directly at luke@lifecoachluke.com. You can find the details in the show notes. And remember, accountability is not weakness. It is the foundation of repair. Until next time, take care. I'll speak to you next week.